Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Real Influencers Project. I'm your host, Craig Reynolds. With me today is a man that started his careers in the bike world and transitioned from there to some pretty incredible things. When I learned about all that he had done post-cycling, I certainly had to find out what and how he got there. It is my honor and my pleasure to introduce Mr. Michael Ardelean. Mike, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Craig. Thanks for having me.
It is so good to see you. It has been a very, I think the last time I saw you might have been at a DK dirt circuit.
I was thinking it had to be that or a DK open house or a Christmas classic or something. And any of those things would put us at like over 20 years ago. So this is great.
Easily. And yeah, I've followed your career from afar. And I have to admit, I'm not surprised at all of the success that you've had post-cycling, post-BMX. When I first met you, watching your style on the bike and then your style off the bike, I thought to myself, this dude's too big for this. Like, he's bigger than 20-inch bikes. And you proved me right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I've always thought I've had a really good judge of character. But when I heard about some of the stuff you did post BMX career, I thought, man, that is so right up. I get it. I see it. So without further ado, let's get to it. Where did you grow up first and foremost?
In a suburb outside Detroit, Michigan, called in Wayne County, called Westland.
Okay. And how did you get into BMX? I had no idea you were in Detroit, by the way. I had no idea you were in Detroit. Not a clue.
Oh, really?
I thought you were East Coast, man.
I mean, my first kind of batch of BMX heroes was the East Coast Bethlehem guys, and I spent a little time there, and I thought that's where I'd end up. But then I met Rooftop and the more of like the West Coast crew and ended up here. But in terms of my like how I got into it, I think this was probably like an over dramatized memory, but my childhood was just incredibly boring. And then one day I found a BMX magazine at the drugstore, and that was like showing me a life and a lifestyle on the West Coast that I wanted for myself. And so first it was like, it just piqued my curiosity and kind of switched me on. And I was like, I need to expose myself to more of this. I would like find the people in my neighborhood who did it, usually like kids much older than I. And after that, I was like, I need to become this, So there were like people on my wall, like Joe Rich and Brian Castillo that I then, and Rooftop and whoever else that I eventually became my peer group. I think just through sheer, like there was nothing else in my life that excited me the way BMX did. So every day I was making massive progress on a bike.
Did you start out racing, or was it right to dirt jumps and street and park and stuff right away?
Yeah, right to the freestyle side. I actually never raced until that one time I raced a Christmas Classic after I had already kind of become a sponsored freestyle rider. And it was impressed upon me how much skill and athletic ability you needed to race, because I was just arriving at the finish line. I think Lee Ramsdale was doing it with me for maybe his first time as well, and like just that feeling of your whole body being rubber halfway. Like I was probably halfway around the track when that feeling set in, and then getting across the finish line was like, whoa, I am not an athlete.
Right. What's funny is that track wasn't even that long. So imagine going to like Orlando and doing it there and then doing it, all weekend. And every time you're like, this is horrible. I hate this, but I love it at the same time.
Yeah. I mean, it was cool for people on the street riding side to make fun of like a racer's athletic body or diet or anything else. But you probably couldn't even come close to performing at that level without weighing your food.
You totally had to, right? Because you obviously you want to have that strength to weight ratio and be as light as you can, but yet still be strong. And you've got to train, and you have to build this muscle to protect you, and you have to build the muscle to go fast and all the fun stuff, right? But at the same time, I think I did one skate park competition at Scrap, and it was like a 3-minute run. And I was like, this is a nightmare. Like, I don't know how you guys ride that long. Like, you guys are pumping transitions and doing all this stuff. I couldn't. It's so different, right? It's same bike, but it's a different thing.
Yeah. Well, if it's any consolation, like even making it through an X Games run for me was next to impossible, and probably the reason I feel like I made the finals at almost every X Games I did, but then I got last place once I was there. You know, it was just, I wasn't a performer, and I didn't, you know, I'm almost 44 right now, and I'm in much better physical shape than I was as a 23-year-old, you know, BMX rider, just because like we didn't focus on building strength or anything like you guys did.
Right, right. So talk to me, how did you went from growing up in Detroit, seeing these amazing people? I mean, we all did this, you know. I grew up in Chicago and I watched all the Stu Thompsons and the Eddie Kings and all these dudes. I'm like, I got to race because this is what I do and I have to do it and I love it. It's amazing. So I totally get it. What was that like when you first were sitting on a deck or at the trails and up rolled, you know, Taj or someone, you were like, holy shit, this is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
What was that?
Yeah,
like?
that would have. So in '92, my friends and I went out to Scrap to watch the finals. We didn't even bring our bikes. We drove 4 hours from Detroit and we drove out to the Chicago area to just be in the same room as all these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And that, being around that, seeing like, because we had watched videos and we had seen the photos in the magazines, but I mean, I remember like it was yesterday, I could smell the wood. I could see Dennis McCoy's green helmet. Like it lit such a fire of inspiration under us that next year we all came back and entered, like, I think we skipped like right to the intermediate class because we were like, we had progressed so much in 1 year. So 93, we were participating. And then from then on, it was just like, still, I would say sitting on those decks with those people it always felt surreal. But for some reason, as a kid who had zero pedigree or education or self-confidence in any other aspect of life, I did feel like I belonged in the BMX world.
That's awesome. That is such a cool thing to hear. You know, we didn't get a chance to cross paths a whole bunch with a lot of those guys. You know, when we were racing, the events were always separate, except for when it was the DK Dirt Circuit, they could combine everything, but it wasn't always the same group. I remember going to Woodward and Marco and Chris Rye had a film camera set up and they were just letting it run. Boom. And I looked down at the half pipe and I'm like, whoa, shit, who's that? And they're like, that's Dave Mira. And I'm like, did the contest start? And they're like, no, this is practice. And he was ripping. And I was such a fan. And I was like, holy shit. It might've been one of the first times that I'd seen him ride. And I had talked to him at like Interbike and stuff, but it was like the first time I think I saw him live and it blew me away. And he was just just commanding the whole place. And it was practice. So yeah. I can feel the sitting on the deck next to these guys because it's impressive. And it's such a creative art form as well, on a bike, off of some coping, off of a jump. It's incredible, which is why it makes sense that you would do it, because I see creativity in you all day. Like that to me makes total sense.
Well, thank you. I didn't see it in myself for a very long period. So kind of you to say. My Dave Mira story, first one was in my little town of Westland. The GT team came to do a demo at the local bike shop, and Dave Mira was 16. And I remember they were pulling up in their truck and trailer, and Mira just jumped out of the truck and started moving construction barriers and cones so that they could get into where they needed to be. Whereas anyone else would have kind of like asked, like, hey, where should we go? Like Dave was just very like assertive from age 16. And I remember like how he rode his bike in that demo and bunny hopped over kids in the street and all that. And then, but yeah, I mean, Woodward experiences with Dave. Dave was one of the first people who, and only people really in the BMX world, who told me to put money away. Like, you know, things you didn't hear in that space.
Right.
But he was a superhero, like the definition of. I think like the peer group that you would think at an aesthetic level or even at like a BMX riding style level were opposite him, like the more hardcore guys. At Woodward, we're his best friends and kind of cabin mates. And like I was in that mix too. And it was so interesting to see them. But Dave just had this other level to him where everything we were doing and focused on felt very small-minded compared to where Dave was going with his life.
Okay. That's amazing. Like I've heard the stories about him as well off the bike, just his his real estate prowess. Like I heard he bought an entire like retail establishment and redid it and opened it back up. I'm like, that's awesome. Like that's such forward thinking kind of a way to do things. Otherwise, you know, the government's going to take your money. You might as well put it somewhere where where you want it to go.
Yeah, and he didn't care like what anyone thought of him. He was sponsored by Slim Jim. You know, he was like, whatever was happening here and the chattering about what was cool or what wasn't cool, like he was up here and it just didn't matter. I mean, in every aspect. I remember I had like I was really getting into cars at the time, and I had this Honda Civic hatchback that I bought from Colin Winkleman, and Mira had like a 500 horsepower Mustang that he would just terrorize the Amish and Mennonite neighborhoods around Woodward in.
You know, it's funny.
Everything he did is just,
he's like the 500 horsepower Mustang though. Like that's like him. Yeah. You know, that was stinking awesome.
And he was so competitive.
Yeah.
Last Mira story, Joe Rich and Dave Mira and I were playing a game of bike, like basically skate, but like bike, or a game of horse and basketball with bikes. Mm-hmm. And Joe and I, at the time, had this one trick, bar spin to tail tap. I haven't talked about BMX in like 2 decades. This is crazy. But the bar spin to tail tap, it was not that, it was novel, I guess, at the time. It wasn't anything that Mira wasn't capable of. He just hadn't really done it yet. And so that was our only hope of like gaining points on Dave in this game. I don't remember how it all ended or who won or whatever, but we got him with that trick, and Dave owed me $10, but he didn't want to pay it to me. He was really like sour about it. For like 2 weeks later, he finally like pulled it out of his pocket like 2 weeks later. Like, you know what, Mike, fine, here you go. And he was upset about it. I also noticed that he mastered that trick and like did it way better than anyone else and did it in competition and everything from there on out. I'm not taking credit for it, but maybe.
You should take credit for it because you got $10 out of it. That's awesome. I love it. Yeah. You know who else rode really strong and powerful like that? Rick Moloturno. That dude, the first time I saw him ride, and I grew up in that area where he would race and would beat dudes handily in the pro class. And then he'd go ride a freestyle contest and just so big and strong and powerful and gnarly. You're just like, there's nothing this guy can't do either. It's crazy.
Yes. I had the same impression of him. My favorite was to watch him ride his race bike in the skate park. Because he, at his park that he owned in Iowa, he would just swap bikes and he would like go grab this bike and goof around. And like, the amazing thing about watching him ride was, to me, the fundamental first learning of BMX is you're going like falling, just like ungracefully falling many, many times a day is part of this. Like you have to get past any problem you have with that, like messing up, screwing up, anything that a bystander would be like, oh, this guy fell. Like you become impervious to that. Falling is just part of what you do every day, even at a skate park in front of pros or whatever, but not Rick ever. Right? Like Rick did everything. It was almost like he took a 1 hour practice session to rehearse everything before anyone showed up. And then after everyone was there, he came out and just like did his routine.
It's probably accurate, you know? He's just that good as well, right? Right, so we're in Detroit. When do you finally make the move out of Detroit and you end up on the West Coast? And from there, I want to get into post BMX and what you did after that.
August 98. There was a point in, I think like the winter of 97, when I was just freezing for 4 months, as we do, with no opportunity to ride a bike. And rooftop, Mike Escamilla calls me on the phone at my parents' house. It says, "Hey, Joe Rich told me you were really good. I want to send you some shoes." And I was like, there's no way this is happening. And it happened. It happened, and shoes arrived, and Mike and I became buddies. And like not even a year later, he was like, "Look, here's what we do. If you want to move to California, I just moved from Big Bear back into my parents' house. There's like 2 extra bedrooms. We can kind of just crash there until we figure something out. Come on out." And I was like, all right. I just started driving, met him in Oklahoma at Matt Hoffman's house. Whoa. We stayed the night at Matt's house because Rooftop rode for Matt's company. And then we jumped in the car together, drove the rest of the way across the country in August 1998 in my Civic with no air conditioning.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's hot. It's a little toasty down south. Yeah.
And I think at that time in my life, I was earning $400 a month for BMX sponsors. I was not smart enough or didn't care to sit down and do the math on how far that would take me in California. And so, and that was a good thing, because like pure stupidity was what brought me here. And I was forced to figure it out.
That's awesome. All right, so you're out there. How long are you there before you start to realize, I need to branch out and do something else? Because it sounds like you've got all kinds of amazing influences that got you on the bike. What kept you on it, and then what forced that transition? Because you went from there into the fashion world, I think, is where your next step was. Maybe I'm wrong.
Sort of. There was a little transitionary period, but basically, yeah. I mean, I can't take too much credit. It was 10 years of earning my living as a bike rider. Meaning I can't take too much credit for like assertively moving on to something else until I think I just like arrived at this point. I had this realization, like I'm in my late 20s and riding this bike is the only thing that I'm good enough at that somebody will give me money for it. And so and it's not even that much money. So I was like, I just arrived at a point where other things in life were more interesting and exciting. I think like working in a creative field, earning a decent living, being around inspired people started to become more exciting to me. So I started to try to position myself in ways that mind you, I'm still like, I quit college to the moment I got my first paying bike sponsor. So it just moved west. So like, really, to your earlier point about gratitude, I think from that point on, my life was just about putting myself in a position where someone could give me an opportunity. And once somebody gave me an opportunity, I'd never screwed it up. Like, even if I had no idea what I was doing, I was like, I'm going to do a good job of this because this is my path out of BMX.
Right. Well, I think that work ethic that you built up through BMX and the consistency of what it takes to learn a trick and the dedication also lends itself to a post riding world where I'm going to do my job. I'm gonna do the best job I can possibly do. It's like when I manage retail stores, man, it's like, I don't like it, but I'm going to be great at it. Like, that's how it works. Cause this is only way I know how to be when I'm doing something is to do it the best that I can do it. I think that's from our bike stuff.
I agree. And I went a really long time in sort of denial about all the good things that BMX gave me. I mean, it showed me the world for sure. And then I also, for someone like me, it was the barrier that I had to get over was like pretty much debilitating shyness problem and like an inability. I had it deep within me to want to connect with people. Now my whole living is around connecting with people. But back then it was like a barrier I had to get over to face. It's almost like how people think about public speaking. Like it's in there, it's exciting, but it's also terrifying. So I think being, my first time on a plane that I could remember, meaning my first time on a plane was like as an infant that I don't remember. My next time on a plane, I was in my 20s flying to Australia to meet somebody I'd never met before to do a 2-week tour by myself because of BMX. And so, yeah, I was forced. It was like the question was basically, do you want to live this life you dream of? Okay, here's the price you have to pay,
Right.
So I went and I basically, paid. I heard someone say the other day about skateboarding. Like skateboarding is how you learn confidence without ego. And I think that's what BMX did for me. It was like all the conventional wisdom now in the business world is like, oh, you have to fail and learn how to fail and fail often and be good at failure. Well, that was BMX every day for me, like falling on my face and not being embarrassed about it. Like that was what. So yeah, I think that's what. If a lot of aspects of my professional growth and everything were very delayed, and I was a late bloomer in a lot of ways. But one thing you and I think got to learn really early was, that just the hard work, failure, losing ego, and building confidence.
It's amazing what you said about being shy, because I was really shy when I was younger as well. But I learned really fast that if I wanted to get a sponsor, I was going to have to talk to people and sell myself and then sell their product to people. So I was forced to start talking. My dad used to joke, man, I thought you were never going to talk. I'm like, yeah, sure. But same thing, man. It was really hard for me to speak to people. But then all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, I can do this. And now I don't shut up. I talk all the time. It's ridiculous.
Well, you probably found a way to enjoy it, because the moment I met you, instantly you came across as someone who was gregarious and enjoyed conversation and because you can see the people who are telling themselves, oh, I have to sell myself, and it doesn't feel doesn't feel real. So I think like the key for me was tapping into the part of me that really enjoyed that, so that it could come out in a real way.
Right. So after BMX, then where do you go? And who were the people that guided you there or assisted that transition?
Transition is the right word for real, because I was like still riding, and then I was like slowly realizing that we get all this free stuff, right? It's bikes, it's parts, it's shoes, it's clothes, and some of it's good and some of it isn't. But I recognized in myself that I had much more of an obsession with that than at a certain point than the riding itself. So Harold Magoo was probably one of the first people who said, hey, like, I'm going to sponsor you as a bike rider, but also if you want to come into the office once a month, advise me on who I should sponsor next, pack up, care packages for riders and send them out and all that. And then
was this at Snafu?
That was Snafu. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
And so then it was also probably one of the first people to give me financial advice that I didn't follow for like 10 more years after. But then it was Sam Arlano and Kevin Dana at Giant. And that was my first real job. But I transitioned to that alongside Heath Pinter. He was officially the team manager for Giant and Giant's sub brands that I was involved with. But kind of partnering with him in certain ways, driving, a lot of it was just driving to the office, packaging up parts, deciding who were the cool kids that were going to represent the brand along with us. Who do we want to surround ourselves with? I got to bring Taj on to, like, imagine that. Taj came on for a period, was riding for Giant Bikes. And so that seems weird. That seems so strange with him riding Giant Bikes. That's odd. I know. I almost didn't remember it till just now. Wow. But for a year I had a job as product. So my first job came like, almost a decade after I theoretically would have left college and got my first job in a normal world. So, and that was a product manager at Giant. And then product management plus consumer insights, financials, spreadsheets, and relationships equals merchandising. So like merchandising was my way of working next to apparel and fashion design people without having gone to design school. So I basically had a 10-year career in apparel merchandising.
That's pretty amazing. And working with some other creative souls, and like Sam Arlano, like he was ahead of the curve as well when it came to outside of the BMX world living, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah. He taught me about furniture, this like interior design, architecture, all the stuff that I was really eventually became much more inspired by. And then he was also bringing in the Giant days, he was bringing in a lot of like outside influences, working with skateboarding photographers, introducing me to a lot of people who I still know to this day who came from the design world outside of bikes.
Nice. That's pretty awesome. Where did you go from there? From once you left Giant / Mosh, where did you go from there?
I went to Quicksilver for, say, 2.5 years. I went to Perry Ellis for another 2.5 years. And then I went to a brand called Alternative Apparel for a while, had a ton of growth there. And then we all kind of disbanded and they sold to Hanes like the following year.
Got it. I think I have some of those Alternative Apparel t-shirts. Actually, I know I do. Guaranteed for sure. Really comfortable shirts. So now you're off doing your own thing and writing books, which was a great book, by the way. If you guys haven't read it, make sure you get it and read it. I'll hold on. It's right over here somewhere. Look, it's on my desk. Budnick told me to get it. I got it. He said, dude, get the electronic version because that way you can just hit the links. And I'm like, dude, I like to hold stuff. So this is the one right here. Boom, get it. Love it.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve, for that. But also for, if we're talking about people who gave me opportunities, I was backing up even before everyone I just mentioned, it was Steve Budnick. He as head of marketing at DK was my first sponsor in the bike world, as well as the person who, introduced me to people like you, and also kind of showed me that you could have a pretty cool, fun, and interesting life in that space while not being a pro bike rider, which to me was more glamorous. Like at a point, having a real job was way more glamorous to me than riding bikes for a living.
Right. Interesting.
So
Why do you think that was? Yeah. Why did you
Just
think that?
I came from a place where like I came from a sort of like fixed mindset, community, family, everything else, and I didn't career pedigree was not part of that. And then also, once, as you know, BMX as a social scene can be at times a very like misery loves company type of environment. So it wasn't cool in that world to aspire for more. And I think I'm generalizing here. I have a lot of really great friends still to this day who came from that space. But when you meet someone who does aspire for more, you kind of like, you want to connect yourself to them, and just curiosity is piqued and you want to learn about that.
Back to Steve real quick. Did you know he designed my Reynolds Racing logos?
I probably did somewhere in the back of my head. That does make perfect sense.
He's incredible dude.
Yeah.
We still chat with him on the regular. He's a fantastic guy. I owe him a lot for sure. So you wrote a book, you're writing another book now. I feel like I'm skipping over a whole bunch of stuff because you started some other companies and did some marketing as well. Can we touch on that real quick?
In 2015, I was vice president of merchandising and design for alternative apparel. I was responsible for 28 people, and one day we all just got laid off. And
sounds like retail.
Yeah. The company decided, probably rightfully so, that they should just refocus on their headquarters in Georgia and be that B2B supplier that they always were known for. So I can't take credit for saying like, I'm going to quit my VP position and go strike out on my own. I was like, no, I waited until I was laid off. And then even then I didn't have any level of confidence to say, oh, I'm going to go be self-employed or anything like that. I was just like, I told myself and everyone else, I'm going to see about some consulting work until the next full-time opportunity comes along. Long story short, it's 7 years later and I haven't had a job since then, but I did a little bit so in the merchandising space, it's just kind of like large corporations need and build merchandising teams. At that time, you were in New York or Europe if you were going to be a part of a company who had that. In LA, there were just a few. So I found this little niche where brands were too small to build merchandising teams, but they needed that sort of financial meets design strategy thought process in their company. So I would come in and basically implement a certain way of thinking in the company and a process and all of that. And it was super fun. I did that for a few years. So basically I found myself at like the business side of design. And so the natural next step was I became a managing partner in a very small design consultancy where the other partners, the actual talent, they were friends of mine who were ex-Nike and they were designing mostly footwear specialized. And I was just kind of helping make that more of a business for them so they could focus on being creative. So parallel to that, I was coaching other creative people in kind of how to get paid enough and on time and calculate rates and negotiate that side of things and set up a process for invoicing and stuff that was super interesting to me. It was like really, it was really gratifying for me to see deserving, talented, creative people participate in financial success. And so in that process, I learned a lot of really valuable lessons the hard way. And that's really what ended up becoming the book.
The book's fantastic. It opened my eyes a ton because there's a lot of stuff that I don't know and didn't know, and reading the book was awesome. At what point were you like, I'm going to compile all this and make a book? Was that your idea? Was it someone said, hey, you know what you should do? You should write a book.
I always enjoyed writing, and like someone said, I think Derek Sivers or somebody said, like Matt Mullenweg maybe, clarity of writing is clarity of thought. And I think Matt Mullenweg would only do interviews for his companies via email because he's like, I want to see how your written word is. It was that important to him. So, and I did find that about myself. Like I became better at communicating verbally when I could go through the process of putting stuff down in the written word. And so honestly, putting the book together, again, probably another dramatized memory, but this would have been like 2018. I took 10 days in Palm Springs and I wrote the whole book. And I had no purpose for it. It wasn't even a book. It was a collection of thoughts, very much inspired by the War of Art. If you've read that book, and Stephen Pressfield is the author. And so I got it all out of me because I needed to get it out of me. And that was as far as I took it. And the other things I was doing in my life were taking my time and energy and earning me money. So like putting out a book was like, I think I hired an assistant at some point I just couldn't even bring myself to like research the process of self-publishing or anything. But a wonderful assistant of mine at the time did that for me and basically brought it to me like, here's what it costs, here's how you do it, here's the investment of time and energy, or you could have a publisher work on it. So long story short, I ended up working with a publisher called Holloway. They brought a wonderful editor to the table named Rachel Jepson, who helped me kind of reorganize the book while still leaving it. Like I didn't have to fight too hard to keep it in my voice. I wanted it to be in my voice. Right. I wanted it to be super concise. I didn't want it to take more than 40 minutes to read because I knew nobody would read it, especially creative people wouldn't read it. Because plenty of material exists in that. There's a wonderful book called Design as a Job that I really enjoyed. There's a lot of different books like that. There's like this pricing and ethical whatever guidelines book I'm looking at right now, but it's this thick. Like, whoa. I wanted to create something that was fun or funny and just a little bit punchy and could be referenced repeatedly if needed, but like your initial sit down with the book isn't going to be more than an hour.
Well, it's fantastic, and I appreciate it. You're writing another book now. What is that one about?
Well,
author, BMXer, X Games participant, marketing genius, like and author. Like just keep adding to them, dude. Go for it.
I've struggled a lot with it because I don't like unsolicited advice. I don't pay attention to gurus on Instagram who are telling you, this phenomenon of like survivorship bias. Like, this is what worked for me, so I'm gonna lay it all out for you, and you're gonna succeed too. Like, so, but ultimately,
Mike, this is what this show is all about: is the real influences in your life that help get you somewhere where you are, not the influencers that we see on social media. But my neighbor across the street that said, "Yo, get the Husqvarna lawnmower because it's the best one." Damn right, I got the Husqvarna, and it runs and it's solid. Like, it's these people, it's our family, it's our friends are the real influencers in our lives, not the people that you find on Instagram and I love Instagram. I love photos. I want to go look at everyone's photo all the time, but I'm not going to look at it and get sold because they've got a pair of Shell Toe Adidas on. Man, I already got the Shell Toes. I'm good. But they're not my influences. And you hit the nail on the head, dude. Thank you for that.
Well, those were kind of looking at those people and being put off by that was an excuse for me not to promote my book or write any more books or whatever. And I think what I might be ultimately arriving at is just getting over myself and saying, look, okay, that was like the behavioral manual for a talented creative freelancer. But like, where's the employee version of that? Like, how do you turn up your income dial, turn down your stress dial, and move through the corporate world more successfully? And I think that's where I spend 90% of my time now. What I do now is I have a recruiting firm that services the fashion and lifestyle space. Like companies need their next whatever creative leader or whatever, they come to us, and my team makes that happen. And so that's who I talk to every day, all day. Probably 20% freelance, 80% career people, creative career people, as well as founders and CEOs who need to hire those people. So I'm learning so many surprising things about that. And so I think that's what the next 40-minute book needs to be about.
It sounds fascinating, and I'm sure it's going to be incredibly helpful as well. Before I go, what are you driving these days? What's your ideal car? I know you've been into cars, and I'm not sure if you still are, but what do you got? Because I'm driving a minivan, dude. I got a 7-year-old little dude that runs around that needs space.
Oh yeah.
So I did put some H&R springs on it, so it's a little bit lower. I did. I can't help it.
I love that. Amazing. My family car is an AMG wagon, which on the surface is a station wagon.
Dude, I
my
love
wife
them,
and kid, you know, and then but beneath the surface is like a wink, like this is the fastest, rarest thing out there that most people don't think is cool. So we're in a little club.
You can hear it when it rolls by, dude. Those things will rumble the car.
Yeah.
Fantastic. There was a Cadillac version like that too, a Cadillac Wagon that was the same. So gnarly. Every time I saw them, like, I need one of those. Like, that's the next evolution in the minivan, like aerodynamics.
Yeah, totally. It's not nearly the interior capacity that you have, but it's more than most SUVs, to be honest, and it's way more fun and way more, you know, it's like the European cool kid, like the Audi RS6 or the AMG,
yes,
the wagons, the stuff you can't really get in the US or is very rare in the US. So, but really my ideal car is just always like whatever I'm kind of focused on next. I've cycled through a lot of different, just sampled and experienced a lot of different cars, and I have a whole list for the future. I haven't had an Italian car yet, so I don't know, maybe we'll go that direction. But I have an older Aston Martin right now that I love, that's really, I've had for 2 years, Aston Martin Vantage, that's super fun.
Nice.
So, but we'll see. I change my mind every day. Cars are just a hobby that you could spend a lot of time and energy debating with your car hobbyist buddies, like what's the next thing to acquire, and that's just part of the fun.
That's, you know what, my very first car was a 77 Volkswagen Scirocco. It was the first year that they had a Bosch fuel injection system put in it, and every day, dude, I'm telling you, every day I was in there adjusting the air fuel mixture because it wouldn't stay.
Yeah.
I had to when I got it, it was mothballed. A valve was burned out. It was a hot mess. Had to reattach all the vacuum hoses because you would get off the gas and the car wouldn't coast. It would just, I'm like, what is going on here? The push in the clutch just so it would roll. Finally figured out air's not recirculating through the motor, plugged all those back in, got the point set, did all kinds of stuff. And it was my favorite thing because I learned so much. And I wish I could find that car because I'd buy it back and give it to my son. However, the problem is I'm sure that thing is in a box now, just compacted and smashed. But it was fun.
Yeah.
It was so much fun.
There was a Scirocco moment that tilted me toward my path towards cars with Josh Hino, who was a BMX buddy and peer at the time. And he had an amazing talent for cars and building cars. And he actually had a mechanic shop in Long Beach that I would take my BMWs to for a while. But he, prior to all that, he took me for a ride. We would go to the skate park up in Ventura, which was like an hour and a half each way. And we were hauling ass up the 405 in his Scirocco once. And that thing was like, I don't know, it probably had 160 horsepower, but it felt fast for how small and light it was. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. So that something clicked for me on that ride.
Those things, as small as air, they don't need a lot of horsepower because there's not a lot of weight to pull around. I love those things. They're great. Well, I do like the new Scirocco that they've got, but we can't get over here. I'm like, that thing ever makes it over here, I'm going to buy another one because they're so cool. But we'll see. We'll see. Well, listen, man, I know it's early over there. I really appreciate your time. It has been so nice to catch up and hear your story. I knew it was going to be fascinating, and it's, you know, it was up to the billing for sure.
You're very kind to have me. Thank you, Craig. We could probably do this for 4 more hours.
I guarantee we could. I had to keep this on track. Otherwise, we'd still be in the BMX days right now. Well, listen, man, have a great day. If you guys like what you're seeing, please make sure that you subscribe here on YouTube. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, you can subscribe there as well. Michael, you have a wonderful day. My best to you and your family. And let's not go another 20 years before we chat again.
All right. Agreed. Have a great weekend, sir. Thank you.
All right, buddy. You as well, man. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.